All right, so this is the informative overview lecture, which I'll also be posting online here, hopefully by the end of the day, so you can review it if you need to. All right, so the first thing in your text, they actually have a definition, and the definition comes from page 418. It's not really important that you know this thing word for word. What's really important in this class is that you know the difference between an informative speech and a persuasive speech. An informative speech at its core is just there to help to increase understanding and knowledge. All right, so if I came forward and gave a presentation on the current state of gay marriage legislation, I would simply say, this is what's going on in the world, and then I would sit down. If it were persuasive, I would tell you both what's going on in the world and what you can or can't do to alter the state of gay marriage legislation. All right? Persuasive is there to change beliefs, attitudes, values, and actions. And informative is just there to increase understanding and knowledge. All right? So it's important that you know the difference between the two. There are some goals in your informative speeches. And in your text, I think they do a great job of talking about meeting audience needs. It's important when you're developing your presentations that you think about your audience. In this class, I want you to think about your real audience. In some advanced public speaking classes, they will ask you to deliver a message to a hypothetical audience. So, for instance, they might ask you to deliver a message to college students on peer-to-peer networking, sharing files and things like that. You would craft your message in a very specific way towards college students. And then they would ask you to alter the hypothetical audience and imagine that you're speaking to a bunch of record executives. That would be a different speech. In this class, you're only going to speak to one audience, this audience. So in the course of thinking about your informative speeches, think about, what am I interested in? Start there. What do I think the class will be interested in as well? Right? If you believe that you can be interested in something and your class will also be interested in it, then that's a good place to start. Think about meeting your audience's needs. Also, don't forget, inform. That's what this is really about. So don't persuade us. Don't let it go into that area. And remember that really you should be giving us something that's new to us. So if you come forward and are going to give a speech on, the Titanic, if that's what your speech is going to be about, you better be prepared to give me new information that exists outside of the film Titanic, right? Because most of the United States has seen that film, or at least seen portions of that film. So if you come in here and only tell me about the things that that movie teaches me, you've just wasted my time. Have information in your informative speech. Something that you believe will deepen people's understanding or deepen people's knowledge. The best test for that is if in the course of your research you learn something, chances are your audience will also learn something. If you don't do any research and you just go off of what you already knew from the first day in this class, chances are your informative speech is going to be pretty doggone weak. All right? So inform us. Embrace ethics. In this particular class, the most important thing that you can do ethically is present information that you yourself have discovered. Don't come up here and deliver an informative speech that you copied and pasted from somewhere on the internet. They're out there. I've seen it, and I usually can recognize it. All right? So that's the best thing you can do ethically. Do some research. Do your own work. Also, cite your sources. That's the way that you can increase your ethics as well. Don't come up here and have this brand new information on how black holes work and fail to cite it. Because if you do, that's actually a breach of ethics. Other people's ideas should be valued. Tell us where those ideas come from. All right. There are different types of speeches or topics that you can choose for your speech. These are called tools of invention. All right. So once again, your question that you probably have right now is, what am I going to speak about? These are different ways for you to come up with ideas on things to speak about. You could deliver a people speech if you wanted to. So if you're a person who's really, really into these gossip magazines. You know everything there is to know about Angelina Jolie. You have posters of her up on your wall. You're thinking of adopting an African child. If that's who you are, this is an area of passion and interest for you, give us an informative speech on Angelina Jolie. That's fine. Or if you wanted to, you could maybe choose a person who's a little more civic-minded, a little more historically probably important, our current president, Abraham Lincoln, whatever the case may be. Choose a person. You can come forward and give an informative speech on that. You could talk about places in your speech. So for instance, if you're a person who was born and raised in Boise, and you know so much about this area, you could come forward and talk to us about Boise, the city of trees. Why is it called that? Talk to us about the Boise River, its important environmental impact that it has on this community, etc. All right, so talk to us about places. That's a speech that you can do. You can talk to us about objects or phenomena. So for instance, if you're a person who used to or currently does work at Best Buy, and you know tons and tons of stuff about high-definition televisions, that could be a speech you could give to us. A lot of us don't understand the difference between a plasma and an LCD and an LED, the hertz ratings, the pixel ratings, all of that stuff. So it'd be an opportunity for you to educate us, and probably a lot of us would be really interested in that. You could talk to us about objects. If you're a person who sells Mary Kay products, and you know the differences in all these different complexions and different styles of powders, there's no reason why you couldn't come forward and give us an object speech on that. Or phenomena. How many of you, I'm just wondering, generationally speaking, how many of you remember that phenomenon that happened in the early 90s where people collected and played with pogs? All right. All right. This is something that, I don't know, was on the scene for about a year and a half. It was just every kid was doing everything they could possibly do to collect these things called pogs. And then it just vanished off the face of the earth. So it's really interesting that some of you remember that. So that would be a phenomena speech, where you could talk to us about what pogs are, how it came about, why it was so popular, and why it started to fail in popularity.
Oh, like pet rocks?
That's another great phenomenon, where people were actually boxing rocks and selling them for a profit. I wish I would have thought of that. Right? That's a genius idea right there. All right, so pet rocks. Those are phenomena that you could actually talk to us about. Event speeches. If you're a person who knows a lot about 9/11, the events that happened, some of the backstory, some of the conspiracy theories, etc. of 9/11, that could be an event speech that you could talk to us about. Perhaps you're a person who was in the Bay Area in 1989 when they had that earthquake in the middle of the World Series. And if you lived that and you want to talk about it, that could be an event speech that you could give us. Processes. So on processes, if you're a person who knows how to read music notation, that's actually what I did at your level for an informative speech, was told the class how to read and actually had them read music notation. So if that's something that you're into, you can talk to us. This is what the process looks like in reading music notation. Perhaps you're a person who loves to travel and you know how to get the cheapest airfare. You could talk to us about the process of booking the cheapest airfare, booking Disneyland at a reduced price, etc. If there's some process that you know a whole lot about, come forward and give that as a presentation for us. All right. Concepts. This one's kind of tough, but I've actually enjoyed most concept speeches that I've heard in this class. One student came forward and they gave a speech on hexadecimal numbering. Brian, do that again for me? Right, exactly. Right? So when you hear that, somebody's going to come forward and talk to you about what hexadecimal numbering is. That was probably the initial reaction of most people. So he definitely has people in the audience who are know-a-littles or hostile to his topic in some way. It was one of the best speeches I've ever heard. And this was like 3.5, 4 years ago. I still remember it. It was an excellent speech. All right, so concepts, numbering systems, scientific concepts like black holes, etc. Here's the warning on concept speeches. They tend to be complex ideas, so you're going to have to embrace analogies. Make it really, really simple to your audience, particularly in a 5 to 7 minute speech. Okay? You've got to break down something complex and make it very simple. It's a challenge. You could also give an informative speech on an issue. So, for instance, once again, the gay marriage thing would be something that you could come forward and say, this is what's going on the East Coast, this is what's happening in the Midwest, this is what's happening on the West Coast. Give us that speech. And then you would simply sit down. An issue speech on healthcare reform. You could talk to us about that. Here's why it started. Here's what it's supposed to fix. Here's where we think it will go. That could be your speech, an issue speech. The warning on an issue speech is this. An issue speech can very, very quickly start to be skewed towards persuasive. You must check yourself over and over and over again. If you approach an issue speech as a sort of news reporter type of idea, just the facts, man, just tell people what's going on and sit down. Don't tell them how to feel about things. The truth of the matter is news reporters aren't as objective as we wish they were, right? And the truth of the matter is just by selecting a topic, we've moved out of being objective into being subjective. Because what we're saying is, out of the million things I could talk to you about, today I'm going to talk to you about this issue. Which means we are being subjective right there because we say this is what matters. All right? But try to have some objectivity in your presentation where you just report the facts as best as you possibly can without skewing it towards one side. All right? Yeah, like Fox News, as some people would say. All right. All right. Types of informative speeches. One type of informative speech is a description speech. Description speeches tend to be done when you feel that your audience doesn't know a whole lot about it and they're going to need some extra information about it. So, for instance, black holes. Probably a lot of us aren't experts on that. That would probably necessitate a description style of addressing things. You don't know a lot, I'm going to give you some information on it. That's a description speech. An explanation speech tends to be given when you feel that your audience is going to know some stuff and you just want to refine their knowledge in that area. So, for instance, on the Titanic speech, most of us have an idea that the reason why people died is because of the movie. It says there wasn't enough lifeboats. The captain of the ship was trying to break a record, and he ignored some of the warnings about icebergs being present, etc. So we kind of know that. I had a student last semester who gave an excellent speech on that, and he broke it down to some of the manufacturing of the actual ship itself. For instance, they had chosen a lower carbon rivet than they should have. And because of that, it caused the whole of the ship to come unzipped much too quickly when it actually hit something. That's an explanation speech. You all have your ideas on something, and I'm going to explain it and put a new spin on it, new information on it. Myths of HIV and AIDS. That's a speech that I've heard in the past. We all have an idea of what HIV and AIDS is, and there's some very common myths that probably most of us hold. And so they gave a speech on that. That's an explanation speech. Or a demonstration speech. In this particular class, we're not going to do demonstration speeches. All right? A demonstration speech would be that how to cook a cake, how to bake a cookie. I sadly got rid of that because I loved eating the cookies and the cake afterwards. But I found that there was just too many issues. Remember I told you that somebody had to use a knife and one of them, and that breaks campus standards, etc. So, not good. All right, don't forget, we've already talked about this in our body lecture, where you can use these different styles of organization. And remember, these PowerPoints are going to be available online, and also my lecture notes will be available online, so you don't have to worry about writing down every single word. But those are those different patterns. To be reminded of what those are, go look at the body lecture. All right. Resources. This is huge. Will probably, hopefully, remind me. I actually want us to spend some time on this, actually getting better at our research. For resources, we've already discussed the fact that Wikipedia is an okay place for you to start your research. Because at the bottom, there are usually authoritative links and citations that you can go visit and see firsthand. It's a good way to get a broad overview of a subject. However, never, not ever, no, never cite Wikipedia as a resource in your presentations. If you do, I'm not only not going to give you points, I will consider taking away points. All right? Do not do it. And don't try to get all fancy on me, and instead of going to Wikipedia, go to Yahoo Answers. I'm not tricked, all right? These places that are just open source, any Joe Schmo can put this stuff out there, those are not authoritative sources.
You're looking for a person, right?
Often,
source.
Often. Or an authoritative website. You know, that's okay. Here's what I would really love you to do. Go to the library link that's on the front page of CWI's homepage. It's right there. Go to it. We have some awesome resources. One of my favorites is Ebscohost. You'll see the link right there on the front page of the library page. Go punch in your search terms in that Ebscohost. Chances are you're going to be very happy with what you find. CSI's library also has a link on that front page, and there's a resource within that CSI library that I love. Okay? Ears for a second here. I'm going to help you out so much right now. If you will go to CSI's library and then go by title, and don't have to memorize all this stuff, it'll be on the lecture, but it will also be on my notes, okay? Go to CSI's library. Once you're there, go select by title. Look for CQ Researcher. CQ Researcher. When you punch in that CQ Researcher, then you're going to have to put in your CSI password instead of your CWI password. When you do that, you're going to go to the most beautiful resource that I've ever found as a student. It's beautiful, all right? So if you want to have more information about electric cars, you put electric cars in there. It's going to bring up a document that would probably be, if you print it out, 15 to 20 pages long. And within those 15 to 20 pages, it's going to have a whole bunch of links. A lot of times they're hyperlinked. So you simply go over the number and click on it, and it will bring you to an article that's a scholarly article. So most of the time, CQ Researcher will help you get through these 5 to 7 minute informative and persuasive speeches in about 15 minutes worth of research. It's beautiful. Okay? So I'll put those notes on there and post them exactly how you do follow those cookie crumbs to that resource, but it's beautiful. On your citation, we talked about this as well, and I'm not quite finished, and I see that I'm keeping you over a minute or two. I won't make a habit of this, but I will owe you time, and we'll get out of class early next time. Okay? It's there to create ethos and credibility. Give me as much information as you possibly can. You do not have to tell me the time of day or anything like that, but tell me the author, where it came from, etc. As far as authority ranks go, and this PowerPoint will be available later, books are really your best source. Scholarly articles are number 2. Newspapers are number 3. Magazines 4, and websites are 5. All right? So with that said, most of the time that I see students, they come forward and give me website after website after website. That's all you know how to do? Okay, I'll take it. But you won't have as authoritative points as if you would actually do the CQ Researcher, the Ebscohost thing. Then you'll start getting to these things. Okay? All right, so what I don't want you to do is come in here and say the reason why you have authority is because Mama said. Mama said they're so hungry because they have so many teeth and no toothbrush to brush them. All right? That is not an authoritative citation. Mama said is not going to cut it in here. Instead, I want books, scholarly articles, newspapers, magazines, etc. Okay? That's a preparation on what you should be thinking about on your informative speech.